Can you see my screen well?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, do you want me to start then?
Yes, please start.
Okay, so good morning everybody. As Lindsay and Kelly said, Mariangelica, I work here at CERL with Francois and Lance. And this is intended to provide an overview of what COBie is and very brief on how to do it. And yeah, I'm going to put it in the context of the USACE and how are we moving forward with getting COBie into their projects. So we're going to discuss the why, what, who, and how. And this is the phase I see all the time that I mentioned this, so that's why I put the glitter guy there. So what it is we're trying to move from basically the delivery of a lot of paper that at the end of the day claim to be useless because people have to like double enter information, have to like ask for information again, don't find it, like all those troubles that as of now ended up costing more money to the project, and it's like unnecessary paying 2 or 3 times for the same data. So we're trying just to improve that process. Essentially what we're trying to do is moving from this, which is this is the old school version of what you get, which is a bunch of paper. And this is the kind of newer-ish version, which is, well, you get electronic information, but you get it in CDs. So what we're trying to do is make the improvement to just like get the information useful and in a kind of like more interactive of mobile way, and then pass that information along and it can be used and everything. So basically that's essentially what we're doing, and we're just trying to get the construction industry up to speed with the rest of the world, basically. So what it is COBie capture as the information. That's essentially the way to put it. It captures equipment information, but it also captures information about the building. So you can capture as many as little information as you need. It started by the development of this report. It was taught and developed by Bill Is, and I think Bill Broad from NASA has some input on it. And they started about thinking what are the requirements that we have right now, what is the exchanges that we have right now, who provides this information in the construction projects. And they came up like you have maintenance, operation, and asset information, your warranties, your space dimensions, so on and so forth. And there was like the first, okay, this is what we need to approach. Then it came back to like, how do we approach it? Then it was basically this is the design of the COBie. You have information getting exchanged in design, in the construction, and you also have common information. During the design, you exchange information about the facility, your spaces, your floors, and the type and components that you are going to have in the building. Then you go to construction and you add on more information regarding those types and components. And you also have the job resources and spare because you already installed it. So you have like those other pieces that you need. And then you always have common information like who I am going to contact if something happened, who designed this. You have your documents, which is that's essentially the submittals. And you have some attributes for each of the types and components, and you can have attributes towards your space, you can have attributes towards anything. Then after it was designed, I believe it's March of last year, COBie became a standard to the National Institute of Building Science and Building Smart Alliance. And the COBie guide is basically the commentary that goes with the standard. and I'm going to talk more about the COBie guide in a bit here. So now it's a standard, and now we're moving forward of what we do, how do we implement the standard, and so on. And that's part of why we are here. Who is supposed to do COBie, or how do you, like in the project? Everybody in the project. Everybody in the project, from the designer to the manager, have a little part on it. Because the idea, again, is to pass all this information from the design to the handover of the project. And I put a note when Francois was talking, because one of the development priority on the operation part is the asset and management space. And then this, like COBie can fit that need. But I also noticed that the programming at the beginning, it wasn't one of the priority. And it's my belief that if you want to get that at the end, you have to start on the beginning. So who does it? As Francois was saying, there is many software vendors that has engaged it also in what we call the COBie Challenges. And what we do for this, we have one for construction, one for designers, and one for CMMS vendors. What we do is we take this COBie file, and depending on the company you are, for designer, they have to produce the file. For CMMS vendor, they have to consume the file. So they use their software, and they show that they are able to do this. We test the file that came out or that is consumed, and then they are like what we call COBie certified, and they have a page in the Building Smart, and you can go there and see who is certified, what data they can consume, what data can they produce, and any of these have gone more than once into the challenge. So then from those challenges, then people start putting COBie as part of their BEAM guides, like VA, Department of State, I believe GSA, and now we're on to USAC headquarters is going to also put it as part of their, I don't know if requirements, if the correct word, but they will put it into the BEAM as the best approach to do. Some of the tools we have out there, we have a lot of tools. This is the COBie page on the whole building design guide, and it have all the information I'm telling you plus more. You have like probably anything you want to know about COBie is in that page. Dr. Is also have a LinkedIn group, in which there is like several forums going on, and people just ask questions about COBie and BEAM and correlation between those, and people just engage in the conversation. So I encourage you to join if you want to know more. There is also YouTube videos created on exactly in detail how to do the COBie, each of the ones of the tabs on the COBie file. It's very expensive. I think there is like 11 or 13 of these videos, and they are narrated by Dr. Ist. Another tool I was saying is the COBie guide, which is the commentary for the standard. The COBie guide describes the deliverables that are like recommended to do during the different stages of the project, and it have initial product and equipment requirements, and the most important part, I will say, is this owner requirement part. It has what we call the Appendix A, which is expected to be filled out by the owner in saying how do you want COBie to be done, or how do you want COBie to be required, because the rest of it is a guide. And there might be things that you are like, yeah, we do it that way. They might be things that you are, maybe we can change this, or I don't care for this piece of equipment. I'd rather have this, or for an air handler, I want this specific information. So you can describe there your plan on how to do this. There is also out there the responsibility matrix, and this was created as a tool for the project team to put together the plan to do this and fill out this COBie. And it is blank, and basically the way it's meant to be used is you basically color code this on who is responsible for provide what. And you have here, I know it's kind of fussy, but you have the owner, the designer, the contractor, and then here is the different information required, and you just can color coordinate who's responsible for what. Then about a year or a couple of years ago, we came out with the automatic checking tool for the files. And what it is once you have your COBie file, you upload the XML version into this COBie server, and it will spit out a report that will tell you the errors that you have in terms of data accuracy. And giving you an example, you might have in your file a piece of equipment that is in room 3106. And then you don't have that space. The report will tell you, hey, you have this piece of equipment in 3106, however, you don't have a 3106 space. And then give you like an easy tool to go back and check. And I use this a lot, and before this came out, it was all manual checking, eye to eye with another person in the room, and it was very difficult. So I found this to be a great tool. We also have common building models also in the page, and these common building models have the BIM file and the drawings and the COBie already filled out. And there is like 3 of them. This is an office building, and we have a medical clinic, and we are about to put out Barracks 101, which is a small building. And right now it has the COBie file, and it has the drawing, and we're working on getting out the AutoCAD files. So that one is going to have the CAD files, and it's going to have the whole set of information. It is a smaller building than the clinic. For the challenges and to test the software vendor, we use the clinic, which is the bigger building. This is the medical clinic again. So now I'm going to talk about the essential part of how to use or how to do this. So what you're seeing in the screen is the COBie file in a design stage. And yes, it looks like a spreadsheet. It does, because it can be used as a spreadsheet, but the design files can be also produced from a design software like Revit or Bentley or any other that has gone through the test. And actually the medical clinic files that we have online, they were made, I believe, it's Revit. So either you create it yourself or you export it, you have this design file. And this specific one is actually from a district of the USACE. It's from the New York district, and it's a project that is currently going on using COBie. So it's the New York battalion. So this is the design. You have, in terms of the types, you have your types with your description, and all this information here marked in red is missing because it's design. You don't get that until later. Same with the component. The component means these are the specific instances of each of the types. And each one of them are referenced back, like you have air handler type 1, which is this type. So it's referenced back to the types, and it's referenced back to which space is it a piece of equipment in. Again, it has a description, and it has some blank information because it's on design stage. So who will provide this red information? It's exactly how it is now. The person who provides you the information right now is the contractor, so he is going to be responsible for also providing that information. And your designer provides this information, which is basically what you get in your schedules, in your drawing right now. So in the initial stages of doing this, we used to provide, the idea was to provide the Excel version of the COBie spreadsheet, and you will fill out, the contractor will fill it out. In the meantime, we find out that it's overwhelming for anybody who haven't been working for this, with this forever. So we decided to create what we call the COBie mini apps. And it's not something like it's different than COBie. It's just the small version of it. This one particularly is to fill out the installation part. And what it is like we took the component names, their location, and the type that are associated. So basically we took this column, and this column, and we already put that information in, lock it out, and give this more version of providing me the model number and the serial number, the installation date to the contractor. The reason this contains more information is once I give it to the contractor, he say, well, I'm required to do the RMS, and I'm having all this other information that I need. So what you're seeing in your screen is the customized version that I did for the New York district. And this is a lesson learned program, process. So right now we are, we know this is the requirement for the USACE. They have to provide this in RMS. So we are kind of matching those requirements in terms of including, okay, what is the spec section? What is some of these other attributes that it has to provide? Because again, the idea is to not double enter information. And at the beginning, when I told this contractor to provide me the information, what he was doing, he was using his own form and then put the information into RMS and put the information into the little tool I gave him. So we did this, so he only had to do it once, and he agreed. It's for his. He gave this to his subs, and they were actually giving him this information on this format. They find out it's better for them as well because they now know the location of the equipment, which is faster for them to find it. That's what I was told by the contractor, and what you're seeing in the screen is actually the information provided by the subs and the contractor back to me. So what we do then when you receive this information, the idea is to merge it back to the actual model. And then you obtain this. You obtain a complete fill out, and I apologize because I know it's little in order to fit it on the screen. So you now have all this information fill out. The reason we don't have the warranties is because they were still on installation phase. They haven't do the startup or the warranties yet, so we're just, as I said, this is a project in process. And now we have this other information. We have the serial numbers, the installation dates, and we added the reference as the spec section here for each of the pieces of equipment. And as I say, I'm providing them a small template for each of the stages so we can collect all that information. The way this was done right now was manually. I merged the information that he gave me into their model. However, it is in the future is being developed the way that they are going to be able to upload these small templates. Once their design are final, they are going to be able to upload it, and the COBie server will merge the information and will maintain that. So how are we going to do this in the core? So there is out there the USACE implementation plan. And it will be, COBie will be included in every military construction project by October 2014. In order to achieve this, we're not just going to say, hey, here is COBie in your military construction project, so go do it, because everybody has worked with a piece of software or tool like this knows it doesn't work that way. So we're creating a plan that goes from now to 2014 to kind of like introduce the concept to people, train people, tell you how to do it, and then finally, hopefully, people will be able to do it. That plan includes communication with the different parties involved, is the engineering division, the contract, like everybody involved. We have to review the USDF 017900 to modify the language to include COBie into the specification. And that's happening right now. It's under review, and I believe the review will close on the 1st of November. On September of this year, we're also beginning to train people from the different districts on COBie, on how to do it, so they can get a sense for when the actual requirement comes. Also, we're going to talk to the technology that is used in the core to have the best integration as we can in order to being able to move all this from one stage to the other, because otherwise it will still be required to do all these exchanges and data entry and a lot of this and then finally, after it's included in the construction projects, we're going to do lessons learned. What did we learn in this process? What is the best approach to it? So on and so forth, so we can continue. This is a cycle, this is a process, so there's going to be pilots, and from those pilots we're going to learn, and we're going to update those lessons learned, and that's essentially what we're doing now with this project we have with New York as well. This link over here, it provides, Dr. Is put out a briefing in DCO, which is similar to the one I'm giving to you, and is in DCO, and it's out there for everybody to go see it if you want to learn more. And I believe he also has the dates. I think it's September 10th.
We did get a question during the presentation on if we could share the slideshows, and I'll send out a follow-up email to everybody, including the slide presentations from this webinar, and also information on Bill East's upcoming webinars that he has in September, announcing COBie.
And with that, we'll open for questions.
You can wait a couple more minutes. As a reminder, questions can be typed in the box in the middle of the screen. There will be more time to ask questions if you think of them in September when Bill East is giving his presentation. I believe that's going to be open for question and answer by the field. If we don't have any questions from anybody, we can move on to the builder presentation that Lance will be providing. We did get one question. Is the plan, if the plan is to eventually phase out RMS and just use COBie? Oh, I guess that was more of, will the plan be to eventually phase out RMS and substitute with COBie?
No, I don't believe that's the plan. It's two different things. Basically, the information is collected. Think of COBie as the tool to move the information from one phase to the other. So information captured by COBie is going to go into RMS. Hopefully in the future we can build in so that information is, I mean, nobody have to double type it up. But I don't think RMS requirement is going out because it serves two different purposes. So once in the RMS is like in the back end of the process, you will say it like that. And that's what we when I say technology support, it's like talking to all different technologies that are mandated or required by the core in order to make a better fit, if you will say, among all the technologies.
If I may add just a word about that, I think the distinction again is like I've referred to the information flow and this software using the information, and that's the same distinction in this case, that that RMS is an application that will derive information through the COBie mechanism and use it in that way. And there are of course other software that COBie will provide as tools and so on, but it's essentially
Exactly, because
to
COBie as
transport the
itself, it
information,
will
as
not create
Mariangelica
you
said.
any of the different, I mean, COBie will not provide you a 3D BIM model. COBie will not provide you a work order. COBie will not provide you,
Would you
for
agree
example,
that
a
it's
land we're
mainly
going to talk
for
about
facility
management your
managers
actual
for
building. It's
operating
not
and
going to do that for you.
maintaining their
It's going
buildings
to
after
transfer that
we hand
information that
off
you
the
get from the
project after
beginning of the
BOD?
project all the way to the end, and basically give you all the information without you having to type it off. It's a tool, it's a format behind it. It's not a piece of software to do what you currently do using another piece of software, basically. Um, Not really, because it's different from management software. I mean, if you were to use it to manage your, like, as I say, it cannot create work orders or anything, but it does provide you, okay, this is um, the PM that you will have according
This
to
is
the
Lance.
Great.
manufacturer for this piece of equipment. This is the PM that
This is
We
you
Lance.
had
Can you
one
guys hear
more
me okay?
question.
However, it will not create
Yeah,
a
we can
work
hear you,
order for
Lance.
you, which is what the
Mary
CAPAs
Angelica, we
I
had
just want,
one more
it will
question.
provide you the information, and
actually, I
the
was gonna,
software has to get that
yeah, I
information,
wanted
and
to
then
chime in
you
on that
use it.
answer,
Because
actually.
otherwise, you will
I
have to
think
be
that the
changing
answer
the
is in the
spreadsheet
name
manually, which I don't
itself,
think
COBie.
it's
It ends in
intended to
IE. It's
use
an
that way,
information
nor people will do
exchange
it that way.
specification of
So
how that
it's
information gets from one
information.
phase of the
Okay.
facility life cycle to the next, specifically from, basically delivery to operations and maintenance. It's not intended to be used as a system for
Well, I
decision
think
support.
Lance want to jump in. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Great, thanks. Mary Angelica, one other question that we received, since you mentioned that we would be introducing this on our new projects within the next year to train up the PDTs on using COBie, what is the training plan for government contract and quality assurance folks in the field for executing COBie aspects of the contract,
You're completely right.
specifically after construction contract award?
Well, as I say, like it will be require, as I showed, these small templates, like the information to be provided in these small templates. So it's in COBie format already, and it can be built up into the model and merged back. So the way the specs are now, and we actually have gone through like the different specs for the different deliverables, and these specs have a bunch of tables, and the reality is people right now use Excel tables because I asked the contractor from this project in New York, can you send me your file? And he literally sent me an Excel spreadsheet that say name, type, spec section, and so on and so forth. So it's basically changing this file that each of
Okay,
different
thanks.
contractors
We had a
have
follow-up
for a
question from
standard
Tom
template that say,
asking,
okay,
what
here you
about
go,
version
give me the
control of the
information
software,
using
and how
this
do installations keep up with
format
legacy
and give it back.
facilities that may be using prior
And we're going to
versions?
train exactly the contractors. I'll have to get back to you because I don't have the plan in front of me, and I will hate to make that call wrong.
Any software that's being used by the projects, as I guess as we're progressing forward, is there going to be an issue with version changes of any software from year
Version
to
of what
year?
software? Of COBie? Can you ask back to them if they're referring? Not in terms of passing the COBie. Not in terms of passing the COBie information. Again, it's the COBie version that is out there is 2.4, and it looks
Thanks.
like a mess.
Another question that
It can
came
be doing
in
any
was, can
version
you
of
link
Excel
files such
basically,
as shop drawings
and
to
that's
the
how you
line
pass
items
the
within the
information,
COBie
whether
file?
the design or CMMS or whatever software in the meter change their version. That's out of the control of how you pass the information, I believe. We do have yes, we do have a document tab in the COBie. I didn't show that one. And then there you list all the documents you have, and in order to exchange it, excuse me, right now you will have, like, we provide a folder that have all the files, and basically the name of that file is linked into the document tab in COBie. And for this New York, they are using the e-submittal in ProjectNet, and that will have a linkage. And eventually, all this COBie, as I say, is being done manually, but it's under development, and eventually it will be automatically done everything, and the documents will live in either e-submittal or some other place, and
Thank you.
it will
I
be
don't
a
think
link
I've
that will
seen
tell
any
you,
more
okay, if you
questions
want
come
the
in.
drawings, this is the name of
So
the file,
Lance,
go
if
look it
you'd
up.
like to begin on your
So
discussion
yes,
of
you
Builder.
can list
Thank you.
your files. Actually, they are listed. Um,
Okay, thanks.
I should have
So I
given you
guess
the
to kind of
code, but
wrap
yeah,
up this
the
series,
answer is
I
yes.
think
Short
the
answer is yes.
perspective that we're trying to add here is kind of a case study of how the information will be used by the facility manager, the customer, if you will, as a result of what we've arranged, collected, and ultimately delivered to them, not only in terms of a facility, but also the information. And specifically, the Builder Sustainment Management System fulfills the role of helping the installation know, as I think as Francois put it succinctly, know when, where, and how to best maintain their facility. And that's really with respect to the sort of planned or scheduled maintenance of that facility. So helping them forecast, when is the roof going to wear out and I need to put a new roof on? When is it time for me to refurbish the terminal and package devices because they're at an opportunity point in their life cycle where I can do some minor repairs, replace some subcomponents, and extend the life? That's probably not hard for one to imagine if you're just a homeowner and you're thinking about your specific roof or your specific hot water heater. It's a whole nother animal when you're dealing with 6,000 buildings on an installation, and the resultant tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of components of assets that you're trying to manage. And so the sustainment management systems as a suite for different pieces of the portfolio, and Builder for buildings specifically, is designed to help kind of cull down that sort of monster list of assets and help them focus their attention on those things to become really proactive rather than reactive to their maintenance investment requirements. So the bottom line up front is that this tool is not just a portfolio tool. Anybody who has kind of had any foot at all in the world of sustainment, restoration, and modernization and exposure to that in the Army, they think about something like the Installation Status Report, which does condition assessments, or they may think about the DoD's Facility Sustainment Model, which looks at the entire portfolio and kind of projects the sorts of information that they need and how much money they need to spend, kind of loosely based upon building type. This is something that Builder is something that gives each facility manager on an installation the unique investment requirements, the timing and the where to focus on for their buildings. And so it's very focused and very tactical in what it does. At the same time, because they now have skin in the game and they have value in that information can be fed upwards and rolled upwards to the upper echelon decision makers in ways that is more robust and meaningful, so that they can go ahead and see what the key performance indicators are. And lastly, the other thing is that we really try to focus on gathering the right data at the right time. So some people as designers may say, if they're doing an energy analysis, are going to want to know how many panes of glass, what's between the glass, what type of film is on the glass. And really for life cycle planning purposes, we don't go to that level of detail. So when I get to the live demo in a little bit after we get through the slides, you'll see that we kind of we cull down to what's the key essential pieces of information that are needed really to make informed life cycle decisions and programmatic cost estimates. They're not things that go direct to the project level details, because that's appropriate to gather and collect once you know something actually has made it above the funding cut line and can be executed. Spending any other time and energy and money specifically to collect that data when you may never get to that investment requirement is just a waste. And we obviously need to figure out how to make our scarce dollars go further and farther, especially in this ever-increasing constrained fiscal environment. So as I mentioned, we have a suite of tools. You see Builder, Paver, Railer, and Roofer are kind of our main four, but we also have been undergoing new additional capabilities with respect to being able to also have other modules. You see the fuel system is something that we're working on with the Defense Logistics Agency. And lastly, we're also starting to look at some of the infrastructure pieces as well, kind of dovetails into what Francois said at the beginning about some of the initiatives that they're working on for infrastructure. As DoD really moves out on standardizing with a way to do condition assessments, the tools that you see up there cover, a significant portion, 70–80% of the inventory, but of course we have other things on our installations to manage as well. And so the services, the military departments are turning to us and saying, we like these capabilities, we want them, but we need them for other things too. We really need it for the full spectrum. So when we set out to design these tools, we said we needed to first be able to objectively assess the infrastructure. One of the challenges the DoD has been beat up about consistently has been the sort of ad hoc, subjective nature about the way in which some of their assessment programs are run. And we do not want to have a situation where it's one assessor's opinion about whether something needs an investment or when something is going to wear out versus another. So that was the first important piece to come up with. If we can establish that baseline rating and then trend that baseline rating over time, we have the ability then to have the organization do an enterprise approach to determining the investment requirements. They can do an automated sort of decision support tool that then filters and looks for the components that need investments rather than relying upon a human's intervention to say, I need an investment now. Since we always live in a scarce environment, how do we let the organization decide how to prioritize their work? Because they have to do that, not just because what's the most economically best thing to do, but they also have to keep an eye on, well, how do these conditions affect my mission accomplishment? So where's the risk? There's obviously other factors as well, but giving the organization a way to consistently define what's most needed according to their definitions. And then lastly, to be able to forecast the investment. Setting those other enterprise decisions in place about what's the performance level for my assets and what's the priority level for these investment requirements is something that if you just observe that for 1 year, you may not have drastically or radically different outcomes from one alternative set of decisions over another. But if I magnify that set of decisions over 10 years, I can have radically different outcomes. And so having the scenario capability to, in that sort of sandbox, simulate that same decision set time and time and time again to get to those two different destinations and say, wait a minute, that's how I know that my enterprise policies are right or wrong, and then dial them as appropriate to get to that expected end state that we're really aiming for. So a little quick roadmap, and I won't drill down on every one of these in great detail, but just the process. Again, inventory, assessment, prediction, work planning, and forecasting. I think where it comes with respect to working with the community of practice and the core, it's about that inventory at the beginning, getting our buildings that we deliver, and how can we seamlessly get that information put into the builder program for inventory so that they can immediately begin to do forecasts on it. And then likewise, when we start looking at work generation and come back out the other side, is the core is increasingly being turned to with some of our enterprise customers, like the Defense Logistics Agency, who is saying, I don't have a project engineer that can scope and do all of our projects, but I have an area engineer that's in my backyard that I can turn this work over to and ask them to scope it and ask them to oversee it. So as we see this drawdown in military construction, the installation support community of practice is seeing the ability and the need for our traditional skill sets to support the military departments with doing the sort of sustainment and restoration and modernization type projects. And that becomes key not only for perhaps the type of work that's more day to day or more year to year in terms of roof replacement or air conditioner replacement, but we also see, I think, in a long-term posture that we'll be expected to do more modernization of our facilities to get them to suit our purposes rather than being able to build ourselves a new building. And so again, I think this discussion comes full circle with respect to saying, well, builder is a recipient of the COBie data or recipient of the building information model data through a vehicle like COBie, but that it also informs and goes, maybe is the genesis for the next round of major project work on a particular facility to be able to say, we're going to go ahead and modernize this facility and have major projects to do that. So I think these things, it really ties in, even though it's more in the facility management world of where it operates, week to week and year to year, it does have touch points that affect us as the core. So we have to start with inventory. We have to know what we've got. Builder breaks things down into the standard Uniformat 2 hierarchy. You see it there, kind of what we call systems, components, and sections. Really corresponds with level 2, level 3, and then level 4 and or level 5 is appropriate for the section descriptions. And it gives the DPW then the ability to slice and dice their investment requirements in that building down to tactical actions, just like the examples mentioned. And it's important to mention, and I'll highlight this in the demo in a little bit, we're not driving down to the eaches. COBie has the detail of each and every single piece of equipment, but for builder, its perspective is life cycle management. So I really don't care that there are, I don't care about the serial number on all 30 fan coil units or heat pumps in that barracks. I care that there's 30 of them that were installed at the same time and are going to be planned for repairs or replacement at the same time. For condition assessment, we really approach this problem quite differently, and I don't want to linger here too long because I think this community of practices emphasis is a little different. But it's important to note that basically what we've done is instead of just asking an expert to go out with a blank clipboard or some sort of clipboard that collects some work ticket information, tell me, write up things that I need to work on, the approach that the sustainment management systems take is record the conditions that you see off of a discrete set of choices. If I'm up on a roof, I'm going to look for ponding, I'm going to look for seam tears, I'm going to look for blisters, I'm going to look where the flashing is separating from a penetration or from the parapet wall. And then the system then has all of the engineering data to say, oh, from a life cycle perspective, that puts you here on its, this puts you at 10% of its remaining life, or this puts you at 80% of its remaining life. So it covers that sort of thing such that you're able to then be able to have the system then objectively determine where the component is at in its life cycle. And the idea, if we do that, then again, going back to that theme of right-sizing data, I don't need to look at a roof when it's brand new, short of making sure that nothing happened either due to Mother Nature or that the mechanic who went up there to replace the filters on the rooftop AC unit, walked in a diagonal line across the roof instead of staying on the access path. And oh, by the way, he had a big piece of gravel stuck on it and he scuffed this nice brand new membrane. That I want to go up there and catch, but I'm not going to go up there and expect to find a bunch of problems. Likewise, at the end of the life, I really don't need to go collect a lot of data about the tears and the seams and the blisters and the flashing separations. The roof's bad. I know it. It's shot. It's just time to schedule the whole thing for replacement. In the middle is where we can right-size some more data collection to get at more diagnostic information to help properly refine what the repair methods might be. Doing that and tying that together with the maintenance management systems that the services are using, as an example here, the Navy has saved a tremendous amount of money over their traditional assessment program. And so there's tremendous cost savings opportunities here. And of course, really what that means is that we're putting that money back into maintaining our facilities better, getting out of break-fix mode and really getting into a proactive mode, which has an ultimate overall impact on our soldiers and the soldiers' families' well-being in terms of the facilities that are supporting them. The other side of the coin, with respect to condition, and that's typically addressed by sustaining our facilities, is, well, how are our facilities functioning with respect to what's the mission going on in there, what are the technologies that we have, whether that be mission technologies or other information system technologies, or even the technologies of our buildings themselves, in terms of, obviously, think about all the initiatives we have with, sustainability and green buildings and LEED and things like that. So this is designed to capture all of those modernization requirements, and each one of those, in that screenshot, each one of those pluses or those lines, you can click on the plus and it expands down to a number of questions, and it's designed to cover the waterfront of all the other investment reasons in a facility that aren't because a specific component is wearing out and needs to be replaced. It's because there's some other sort of, design or configuration or codes and obsolescence, a whole host of issues. But Builder has those things, and that's something that as the users of Builder complete their understanding of implementing the inventory and the condition assessment process, they're now beginning to turn and develop a look at the the functionality assessment program, so that they can start to get their hands wrapped around what might my modernization requirements be, and where might I have candidates for modernization programs rather than replacing facilities. The real strength of Builder or any of the SMSs lies in their ability to do that component modeling for each unique component. So rather than just going and pulling an inventory database and saying, show me all of my 19-year-old roofs, is as this roof ages and as we go up and inspect the roof, that may indicate that that roof is going to fail prematurely. The system will alert the facility manager to that, so that they're able to, again, get ahead of that problem rather than wait for the tenant to call them and say, hey, I need 50 buckets to collect all the water that's dripping through my ceiling onto my floor. And this model is doing that adaptation for each unique component in the inventory. So in the case of the Marine Corps, for example, their entire portfolio has 350,000 records of unique components, and each one of those has their own unique profile of what they're doing. So very powerful, very focused on the unique specific needs of each component in their inventory, not a group of components and how they behave. So once we have that baseline and we know where components are going, the real meat and the real benefit coming out the other side of the whole process is giving the installation and then ultimately flowing up to headquarters a list of all of the investment requirements. And the idea here is that instead of somebody making a decision when they're in the field saying, yep, I need a work item, the system has a set of triggers that the organization defines what their condition threshold is. And any piece of inventory that gets below that threshold automatically generates work at the time in which it crosses that threshold, and the system will automatically do the life cycle cost analysis of the capital costs to be able to determine if, gee, it's probably a better option at this point to just go ahead and replace it, because trying to fix it at this point isn't going to add that much time onto the life of the component, and I'm just pouring good money after bad. And the takeaway from this with respect to responding to Congress and responding to the Office of Management and Budget and the like is that I now have a traceable set of requirements so that when Congress gives the budget, we know why we needed the money because it was rules-based that drove that requirement or generated that requirement, and it's all the way down to that specific asset in that building so that when the money gets dispersed, we have a method to track that it goes back to those buildings to make sure that we get our buildings that were red get fixed, and we don't just siphon the money off to keep green buildings green when it's really the red building that needs the money. As I mentioned, we always live in a scarce funding environment, so figuring out where the money goes in terms of greatest need is really up to the organization as well, but then defined as a consistent policy, if you will, across the entire enterprise, and it gives them the ability to look at engineering factors, risk factors, economic factors, mission factors. They can put all those things together. Those little tape measures in the screenshot would be each one of those metrics that I'm scoring work item against and assigning points based upon the value of that metric. And then the targets or bullseyes in that tree is how I would roll up those different scores together to get to the final score of how do I identify I'm doing the right work at the right time. What does that mean to that given organization? So it gives them a consistent way to have that investment guidance, and they can decide, for them, what needs the most attention and what gets addressed. Ultimately, one of the major requirements that DoD has to feed is the condition index metric, which basically is a formula that says I need to look at my risk of deferred maintenance as a ratio or a percentage of the building's value. And so coming up with that numerator now is automated by the builder business rules in the work generation and the prioritization, and then obviously how much money you have to figure out how far down that 1 to N list of prioritized work items you have, rather than it being a subjective-based approach where you just have an expert, so-called expert, who goes in and is supposed to look at everything in the building and catch everything and interpret what they're looking at against, in their mind's eye, what the organization's performance requirements are for those components. So I mentioned last forecasting. It's really the exact same process that we just talked about in terms of predicting condition, determining if the condition at that point in time is above or below the threshold for work, above or below the condition threshold to trigger work, and then prioritizing and funding that work. And so the builder system can simply do that in a sandbox for a number of different scenarios to be able to allow the user to determine how much money do I need? If my budget is cut, what's the consequences of that? And looking down the road, how can I determine what my risk exposure is? And am I getting enough money in the palm to maintain my facilities? If I get new facilities, what does that do to my budget requirement? Because it may lower my energy requirements somewhere else, but that may mean that I have Does that mean I get more money to do the SRM for my aging facilities? Or are my aging facilities getting so bad and all of the problems are starting to pile up that I really get a bow wave of investment requirements coming through the pipeline that I need to be aware of that are going to suck money away from more mission critical things just due to the criticality of getting these failing things fixed and off my books. Just graphically, looking at having the ability to say, I can look at those different runs side by side and say, what happens if my budget is cut by 10%? What happens if it's cut by 50%? What's the pay me now or pay me later principle? And not only doing that because the models are really operating down at the individual component level, not only doing that at the total portfolio picture, but being able to drill down and say, well, what does that mean about the roofing at base X or building Y? You can really drill down to any detail you want, and so the perspective can be one of the entire military department looking at their portfolio. It could be a MACOM looking over their facilities. It could even be, if the information was provided, could be provided to a mission commander to know if, as a consequence of the components degrading, are they going to be able to do the mission in this particular facility. So the results are an engineering-based investment plan that provides decision support to all echelons of the organization, all the way from the DPW person who's performing that sort of program planning for maintenance across their entire installation, all the way up to headquarters, to AXIM if we're talking about Army, or headquarters Air Force if we're talking about Air Force, or NAVFAC and CNI if we're talking about Navy. So it really supports all of those, and what it helps do is it highlights investment opportunities to stretch the limited dollars that we have by, capturing those opportunity times to do repairs, and also looking at the remaining service life and capturing when things are going to fail and get those done just in time, so that we also have the ripple effect. And what's the total effect? What's the total cost of failure? Is obviously there's a lot of soft costs in terms of impact on the mission, that if we can mitigate that and be aware of when these things are coming due and get them addressed just in time, then we can avoid that sort of penalty. And then lastly, we look at providing course of action analysis as a really avoidance of the big ticket items. And so, as I said, we don't have this sort of, oh my gosh, I didn't know that needed to be done, and now we need to take this entire facility and the resultant mission that it supports offline because we have to get this fixed. And oh, by the way, that may not be right away. That may be something that we have to kind of line the money up for in the out years because it's such a big ticket item. I don't have that sort of money left in the budget for this year. So we're reducing the assessment cost by having a different approach and by right-sizing the type of information the level of detail we collect and the frequency with which we collect it. We're avoiding missed opportunities because we're giving them sort of visibility about when they can go ahead and make those repairs to extend the life. Because the system has the predictive models built in, it doesn't require somebody to go out and make an eyes-on decision point to generate data. So in the traditional approach, yeah, they may make a decision to go ahead and say this needs work, but they don't get to it because of priorities for 3 more years. Well, they've got to send an assessor back out to rescope that project because the data that they collected originally is a single point in time. It doesn't have any sort of predictive capability to the data that they collected. We can add additional assessment protocols as needed. We're doing that right now with Defense Health Agency. This is for anybody who's listening that's in the medical arena. The Defense Health Agency as a set is looking at their requirements and saying, and in this, the additional protocols goes to the functionality, asking questions about the dimensions of the space and the number of customer patient treatment areas, and how does the workflow work with respect to the staff, and do they have the types of things they need to do in order to support that mission, to support those patients. So we can do those sorts of things to drill down our functionality to more organizational specific checklists and protocols to get a better handle on what those functionality and ultimately modernization project requirements would look like. And I think that's also a feedback into the centers of standardization, because as we do this over time, that's also a valuable feedback loop to be able to say, well, how do our standards need to change over time based upon the information we're getting? And it may be something that is a lagging indicator, because where we're going to see the functionality issues crop up first is our older designs versus our newer ones, but it's still an opportunity to mine that source for information as we look to continually improve our standards and our standardized designs. And then last but not least, we have an R&D budget line that we use or that we compete against, and in support of the entire Department of Defense. It's a very good leveraged ability to deliver new facility management capabilities. So that's about it for the slides. Lindsay or Kelly, if you guys would go ahead and release the screen, I will go ahead and bring up Builder and just do a quick whirlwind to kind of give a last piece of this, I think, to kind of help bring this home as far as exactly what the tool is, and then open it for questions.
While Lance is getting that pulled up, as a reminder, you can type in your questions to the lower portion of the screen in the middle, and after he does this demonstration, we'll go over those questions.
And I only want to take probably about 5 minutes or so here, if that. I think I want to try and focus on the sort of information that Builder has of the facility design, because I think that's the part that's most of interest to this user community. Of course, you can always ask questions if I leave something off. But basically, the entire enterprise is loaded into one database. So in this case, we're talking about the Army, and I can look at IMCOM, and anywhere along this level, there can, the organization will have the ability to have permissions and define their particular enterprise settings. But I'm going to go down to Fort Hood, which we did a pilot at just last year, and basically we looked at company operations facilities, brigade headquarters, and we also looked at some housing. And so in that, looking at the list of buildings, I can look at a building, and just as I mentioned kind of in the inventory slide, we get our standard building information from the real property information that's collected in terms of being able to say building number, building type. We had an admin building that was obviously part of the scope, size, year constructed, number of floors, those types of things, and then break the building down into its systems. And then breaking the building down into its systems, I can look at the components of the building, and anybody, obviously these are probably pretty familiar classifications. And then we get down here into the sections. And the sections is where we break it down into, you can see a Uniformat 4 code there, and then we, in the case of obviously mechanical, is very complex, break it down into additional variants of that, because each one of those has a different design life and has a different replacement value. And ultimately, we have cost data behind this that the organization can control and manipulate, but that, again, that cost data is what ultimately feeds the work plan to be able to say, well, how much does this work item cost? So as I mentioned, so you're going down to this equipment level. There, in this case, this building has 2 of them. They broke them out separately by designating them east and west. In addition to that, and I'll show a housing example in a little bit, you may put a bunch of these things all together in one and then just have a larger quantity. These are more significant systems, so they split them out separately because in addition to just their size, they don't in this case, have different ages, or obviously if they were different sizes, they're not in this particular building's design, but you'll see some other examples where they are. Obviously each one of those have different factors. So our model, our vision, our approach, and I'm working with Mariangelica on this, is to be able to take the COBie data and pull that data into Builder to be able to populate this list of systems and components and sections. What we're working on right now is making sure that when we get the COBie data, not only would it contain the mechanical equipment, which was the original perspective of COBie and the stakeholders, but also to focus on the facility assemblies, the roofs and the walls and the windows and the interior construction, partitions and floor finishes and things like that, because those are all things that ultimately have to be maintained. And so getting that full entire set in COBie and being able to then bring that into Builder so that when we deliver a facility, or even if we're at a certain stage where we want to bring in some sort of partial complete, bring that in so that as we're doing our forecasts out into the future, when we get out to 10 years from beneficial occupancy, we can already start to see where the investment requirements and some minor repairs in that facility might start to be popping up in the budget. I'm not going to go over the condition assessment screens. I think that's probably not as much of an area of interest, but basically then kind of getting to the the end results, looking at a work plan, then again continuing to drill down and go back to Fort Hood again. The facility manager is able to say, generate my list of work items, and it creates this list, and he's able to say, prioritize my list of work items, and the score would be completed. And so then I would know of the roughly 1,000 items that I have, what rank order they're in. And so I'm able to look at each one of these, and I can begin to get an idea of the level of, you can begin to get an idea of the level of detail and how all of this goes together. So also on the Mercy site, another group, another project that some people may have heard about or be working with is the SRM Wizard, which is taking this data from Builder, and we're then giving it to the maintenance management system of the end user. In one example, Defense Logistics Agency, they're racking and stacking all of their requirements together across not just buildings but other things, deciding when they're going to schedule or program that money, and then giving that list back to the Corps, who then takes the same list of details from Builder and that information from the DLA to then go out and create fully fundable estimates. So we're extending the life cycle of the information and reusing it with additional appropriate tools at that right point in the life cycle based upon what we're being asked to perform for the customer, for our customers. And so that SRM Wizard is a separate tool outside of Builder, but it's something that some of you may have had exposure to, or perhaps Lindsay and Kelly can also bring that for another presentation opportunity in the future. As a whole, the installation support community looks to do more of that type of work with our core competencies as we kind of get away from and do less MILCON as that draws down. So that was really it that I wanted to kind of show in the demo, kind of short, quick, and simple. I wanted to kind of focus on the inventory level of detail. I did promise one other one. I was going to do a barracks, and just to show again as an example here, if I go to terminal units, I can look at the heat pumps in this barracks, and I have 65 of them. So I'm not necessarily capturing the eaches. I'm capturing the family sets. Now Builder can go ahead and capture the eaches. And you can see here that they actually went ahead and captured each one of those heat pumps, and they captured the serial number, the model, the capacity, the manufacturer. If anyone's involved at all with, the Air Force program, for example, Air Force is using Builder to collect this information to populate their new maintenance management system. So they're resetting their entire equipment inventory, and they will use this then to build all of their preventative maintenance schedules for their civil engineering squadrons to actually be able to go out and do their maintenance. Likewise, on the Army, it's an opportunity for us to collect this data to go into GFIBs for those bases that have never had a preventative maintenance program and would like to actually implement that best practice. We did have one question about
to get ahead of the power curve if there is any way to modify or reset a feature within Builder when bringing a defective component that was replaced or repaired under warranty. How do we update the information within Builder to reset it back to baseline for future forecasting?
Right. So you would generate a new inspection point that would indicate that what that resultant condition is. So if if you substantially repaired everything, and obviously different components, types of components have different repair methods, you might be setting that back to a defect-free state, or you might be addressing one specific thing. If it's a complex piece of mechanical equipment like a rooftop unit, and you just are replacing a fan motor or you're replacing a condenser, that might now be defect free, but the other things might still have problems. You still may have rust on the enclosure. You still may have fan belts that are starting to age and harden and crack a little bit, but not enough to need repair. So it depends on the
Great,
situation,
thanks.
but yeah, you would
Another
put another
question was,
inspection
how do you
point
feed
in
information
based
into
upon
Builder prior
what
to
the
being
conditions
able
are now.
to use COBie or IFC?
Right. So most of the information is collected manually in the field. That's something that either is done on paper form, or we have a tablet PC or laptop PC based program that can be used for data entry. Those are the two predominant methods that are being used today. There are some other things that we did that we demonstrated with the Air Force, with the Army, in the pilot here at Fort Hood and carried on at Fort Campbell as the second site, where because we have a standardized design, we were able to build a template of that standardized design and apply that to multiple buildings of that same design, and then just go in and do inspections, and that was a dramatic time saver. I think that in the case of Fort Hood, they were able to save about 20% of their original estimated level of effort just by implementing templates, and that was only just for barracks. They were not instructed to use it for the company operations facilities, the other admin type facilities, and they were so happy with the contractor was so happy with it, they implemented it Fort Campbell for everything. And I don't have the numbers off the top of my head to remember what the final cost savings was there. Those are ways to do that. If there's existing data, we have the expertise here at Searle to work and create conversion maps and load legacy data in if there's enough of it and there's a standardized format for that. We did that for the Navy. We converted over 1 million records into Builder in an automated process. We're doing that now for the Defense Health Agency. We're creating a utility that will allow them, as part of their data collection routines, to go out and collect inventory when they go do those assessments next fiscal year, to also have a utility that captures that mines and uses their existing equipment inventory out of their maintenance management system and load that into Builder. So we're building them a custom tool for that, because everybody has different data sources. Benefit and the beauty of something like COBie is we can point somebody to a standard like that and say, hey, you all go to that standard, and then we only have to
Another question we got was, is SMS
one format.
to issue work orders to maintenance personnel, or can it feed into another facility management system if it doesn't do that?
Right, we're working with the intended design. I mean, if somebody doesn't have a work order management system, they can certainly use Builder to do that. Keep in mind, Builder doesn't do corrective maintenance calls and preventative maintenance calls. It's really designed to be a work plan generator, a requirements identification tool for for that scheduled maintenance. For every one of the military departments, we're working on integration pieces that will automate the flow of that information to their tool. So Maximo for the Navy, USMC Max, which is also Maximo for the Marines, Tririga for the Air Force, and ultimately GFibs for the Army. That's a little further way out because the Army is the farthest well, the Army is the one that has not moved out yet really on Builder. There's been these pilots, but as far as the enterprise approach, they're still working on that. All the other services are, are on their way, and we're working with their respective CIOs and their tools people to make that integration happen.
Another question we had was,
but
is
that
it
is
the
the model
intent to
still. We've
replace
actually met with the
facility
GFIBS folks.
maintenance programs like
early
GFIBS,
stages
or
of
to
discussions and figuring out what the data mappings would look like. No, very much it's a supplement. We see a complementary relationship between the maintenance management systems like GFIBS that handle work execution and Builder and the other SMSs that do requirements identification. So, we do the SMSs assess the facilities and identify where investments are needed. It's the maintenance management systems to actually make sure that, to actually figure out how that work is carried out. Is that a contract action? Is that the shops? Are you doing are you going to bundle 2 or 3 of these work items together because they're all roofs in the same barracks, or they're all HVAC in the same, complex, etc.
I think we might have lost you at the end there.
You still hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. I think it was just getting a little choppy.
Can you guys hear me now? Not sure
if you
why.
could.
I can.
Oh. Okay. Okay. So do you need me to repeat the last part of that answer then? Sure. I think that basically, no, our intent is not to replace the facility programs. It's a complementary relationship. The SMSs identify the work, and the maintenance programs are responsible for determining
if there aren't any other
tracking
questions,
how that work is actually carried out or executed.
We can wrap this up. We're right about the end of our time that was set for 11:30. Well, thank you all, and we appreciate your time today, and thanks to everybody who joined in. We had a great response from our RECX teammates, so thanks everyone for hanging in there for this long series of webinars, and we'll be posting these shortly to the MRSI site, probably within the next week or two. And we'll follow up with information on the upcoming COBie webinars presented by Bill East, and we'll also provide the slides that were presented today.